Good morning, everyone. The Lord is risen. He is risen indeed. It may feel a little funny watching me say this on whatever screen you're watching as we share this time together. Each year, I am so excited when Easter kind of rolls around. I get really excited. My heart starts pumping. I feel like a little kid again. I love to get dressed up for Easter. I love all the amazing smells that accompany Easter services and gatherings together. The hyacinths, the tulips, the daffodils, the branches that are in bloom. I love the smell of all of those things. And I wish, beyond seeing and sharing some visual kinds of things, that we had what Emerald Lagasse used to call about long ago, something called smell-o-vision. We could all kind of share those wonderful smells of Easter, as well as some sights and even some sounds of Easter today. It just sort of brings out all that Easter is, and bringing out Easter is what we're about today. This being such a different Easter in all of our experiences and memories, and to be honest, I don't ever want to have an Easter like this one again in my lifetime. But it's important not only in the midst of what we're sharing and experiencing to hear the message of the good news of Jesus' resurrection, but to know how it fits where we are today and place it in the context of our lives. For that reason, I've shared with you a reading from Psalm 107 and also turning our attention to the gospel, the end of the gospel of Mark, where we begin even now. Mark's ending of his gospel is kind of unique. It doesn't do what we think it should do, and it does do what we need it to do. Mark writes for those who don't experience the physical resurrection of Jesus, but as one commentator put it, Mark writes for those who feel like they are struggling against the wind in a tiny skiff during the dark hours of the night. Even after God's revelation has taken place in Jesus' resurrection, mystery, fear, and failure remain. This year, for many of us, that hits a chord of resounding familiarity. For this reason, I want to explore with you the question of the women that opens for us the center of Mark's description here at the end. Mark gives us just enough in the question and around the question to really help us to open up all that Easter is. We know Jesus is dead, that he has been crucified and buried, and time has passed, days have passed, the Sabbath has passed. And therefore, there is now an ability to move about without a huge outcry from any and every corner of the community. At the dawn of the day, the first day of the week after the Sabbath, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome go out and they buy spices. And they had to think about the need to buy those spices at least the day before, maybe even before the Sabbath, because you can't buy spices on the Sabbath. So they had to get their lives together and organize to go out at the first thing, at the very inkling of daylight, to go to those familiar purveyors of those ingredients. Now, these three are important women to the early church. Mary Magdalene, the woman whose life is turned around because Jesus accepts her and welcomes her not for what she can provide for him, but because she is able to receive grace and forgiveness fully in her life. And we know from verse 19 of Mark's gospel that Jesus cast 7 demons from her. Mary, the mother of James, either the wife of Cleopas or Alphaeus, depending on which scholar you follow, whom we know little, save that she was most likely a follower of Jesus and that her sons also became apostles. And then there is Salome, not the dancing daughter of Herod, rather common name for women in those days, who is said by Matthew to be the mother of the sons of Zebedee. And these are women whose lives have been affected by Jesus, and they have followed Jesus, and they felt close to Jesus. But they're not under the suspicion of the regular associations of Jesus just before the crucifixion. An assumption kind of validated by Mark in his mention of them here. These 3 women open up the news of the resurrection, not just in a discovery of an empty tomb, but in the question they ask, the same one, by the way, that we might ask. The women are on their way to the tomb in the early hours of the day, just after daybreak begins, with spices that they've purchased, when it dawns on them this question: who will roll away the stone from the tomb? Dr. Timothy Johnson, in a rather widely read book some years ago, gives us a clue in the title of that book. The title is Finding God in the Questions. And in the book, he recalls his years as a physician and his long journey of faith. And he encourages all not to shy away from questions. And that's just what we're doing. We're not shying away from the question. We're engaging in the questions so that we might more fully be engaged in our journey of faith. And so at first, we might hear this question of one of immense practicality. They were on a task, spices in hand, to accomplish a particular deed, taking care of a body. It's a practical kind of question. And I've been talking about this week disconnected kinds of questions, questions that represent this disconnection from the person with which we're engaged or the life we're supposed to be engaged. This is not that kind of question. It's a step-by-step explanation, really, of the connections that already exist between women and Jesus, between us and Jesus. And Jesus is in the tomb, in a grave. And in front of the grave, there is a large stone. Some describe it about the size of a cart's wheel, which means it's about several hundred pounds in weight and a good size to boot. Not easily manhandled or managed. It's of some substance. And then there are guards posted outside the tomb. Mark doesn't tell us this, but the other Gospels do. Guards to make sure no one enters, guards to make sure no one leaves. At least no one without authority. And that's the first part of the question. Who has the authority that we need? I know you're thinking they're going without the sense of authority, but their question is really one related to authority. Recall, if you will, from a good study of Mark's gospel, that the authority of Jesus is a central issue and theme. Mark everywhere wants to make us aware that the authority is not of this world or of this place or this situation. The authority is in Jesus, who constantly asserts his authority in every situation. And so that authority extends to every area of life: authority over nature and storms, authority over demons and evil, authority over disease and healing, authority over religious practice and forgiveness, even over emotions with anxiety and fear. Now, the women are wondering about this authority. They are off on their own. Now, at least they think they are. I mean, God has a different perspective on the designs we make about life. And the light bulb goes on within them. Who's going to give us the authority to do what we're going to do? To manage the stones, to get access to the tomb? Who's going to give us that kind of authority? Yes, I am downplaying the practical for just a moment, because the practical part, the joining in the actual physical moment and movement, I'm relaying to the power part of the question. Because there is this rolling away of the stone, this physical impediment. And how often do physical impediments prevent us from a task? We don't have a car. We can't enter the building. We lack strength. Our legs are weak. Our arms are not up to the task. We can't breathe. And then we should not neglect the non-physical impediments. A history of hurt can block us from those who want to love us. Emotional abandonments, unfulfilled expectations, abuse, the suffering of someone whom we love. These are all kind of impediments to our relating and interacting with someone important, like Jesus. Thousands of times have I heard someone say, well, I think I can believe in God, but I can't get to God because there is this thing that stands in my way, and I can't get over it. I can't get through it. I can't get around it. I need a different kind of power to enable me to do it. A great preacher once said, the best news of the Christian gospel is that the supremely glorious creator of the universe has acted in Jesus' death and resurrection to remove every obstacle between us and himself, so that we may find everlasting joy in seeing and savoring his infinite beauty. I love that phrase. So let me state the question of the women. It's a collective kind of question, really, so we can join in a collective kind of restatement, if you will. Join with me. Who has the authority and the power to move the major impediments that keep me from accessing death? And that is the tomb, which we'll come back to in just a moment. So when we put the question that way, it seems almost rhetorical. The answer is Jesus. No one but Jesus has authority and power to do what we need to have done. And that's especially important to me today, because much of what's happening around me and us gives the same feel of the needed response. Who has the ability to deal with this surging COVID crisis? The medical community is doing all it can to deal with this surging problem of humanity. And it admits it is ill-equipped, it is unprepared, and it's frightened by both of those. And they feel powerless almost to respond and pleading for help in every corner, in almost every way. And the government admits to not having the authority and depends upon cooperation to stem the tide. And we are stuck. We are stuck in moving, as it seems, to the one place of inevitability. We are stuck moving toward the tomb.